Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we are diving into a hidden truth about who you really are. And it's a truth so deep, so fundamental, that it's been told by an ancient philosopher, a spiritual master, and modern scientists in almost the exact same way. It's a story that's going to challenge the one thing we all take for granted, that we're the main character in our own life. Let's get into it. So I want to start with a really big question, and this is going to be our guide through this whole explainer. What if a Persian philosopher from way back in the 11th century, the core teachings of Buddhism, and the latest discoveries in evolutionary psychology are all pointing to the exact same conclusion about who you are? I know, it sounds pretty out there, but you're going to see the connections are, well, they're just staggering. All right, so let's start with our first source. We're going to travel back in time all the way to the 11th century and look at the work of a Persian philosopher and poet named Naser Khusraw. And let me tell you, he had a truly radical idea about our place in the universe. Okay, so Khusraw starts by taking a huge swing at a really foundational story of where we come from. He argued against the idea that all humans just popped up from a single couple, like an Adam and Eve story. He proposed something way bigger, and honestly, a lot more humbling. He believed that we weren't some late addition to the party. Nope, he said humankind was created at the exact same moment as the universe itself. The cosmic forces, the planets, the stars, the laws of physics that create a person today, they're the exact same forces that were there right at the beginning. We weren't a special project. We are a part of the original cosmic recipe. A fundamental part, yeah, but definitely not the main ingredient. In this quote, wow, it just nails his whole point. By quoting the Quran here, Khusraw is pointing out a huge error in how we see things. A bit of cosmic arrogance, you might say. We tend to think of ourselves as the crown jewel of creation, right? The main event. But he's arguing that the creation of the entire cosmos is an infinitely bigger deal. And the fact that we don't see that, well, he says that's a sign of a really deep ignorance about our actual place in the grand scheme of things. Okay, so why do we get it so wrong? Why do we have this built-in instinct to put ourselves at the center of everything? What's amazing is that Khusraw also pinpointed the culprit, the very tool that leads us astray, our own mind. And this, right here, is where we find our first mind-blowing connection with other schools of thought. Khusraw actually gave this problem a name. He called it aql al-juz'i, which basically means the partial intellect. Think of it as our everyday individual mind. And he argued that it's fundamentally limited. I mean, it's great for figuring out what to have for dinner or how to get to work, but it is just not built to understand ultimate reality. This reminds me so much of Plato's allegory of the cave in Western philosophy. For Plato, we're like prisoners watching shadows on a wall, thinking that's all there is. For Khusraw, our partial intellect is the cave. It shows us only the shadows, not the bigger picture. Our own thinking is the very thing holding us back. And this is where it gets absolutely wild. Just look at this. Khusraw's partial intellect from the 11th century, you see these echoes of it across time and culture. In Buddhism, you get this famous warning, beware of the mind. The mind is a pretender. It just collects facts without any real wisdom. Then you jump forward 1,000 years to modern evolutionary psychology, and you hear scientists saying our brain's main job isn't to find truth, it's to survive. Which means, as one scientist put it, it's designed to mislead us, even enslave us. I mean, come on, 3 totally different sources all saying the same thing. Be careful, because you can't always trust your own mind to tell you the truth. All right, let's keep building on this because it gets even deeper. This idea of a limited mind leads us straight to the idea of a limited or maybe even non-existent self. So for Khusraw, the logic was pretty simple. The general category is always bigger than the specific example. The whole concept of humanity as a species is a much bigger deal than any one individual human. It just didn't make logical sense to him that this huge, diverse thing called humanity could all come from a single person. It's another way he intellectually pushes the individual out of the spotlight. And this is a huge contrast to a lot of Western philosophy, which often puts the individual self right at the heart of everything. Now, let's switch over to Buddhism and see how it takes this idea of not being so separate and special even further. The Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh talks about interbeing. It's this idea that when you really look at a person, you see that they're made of things that are not that person. You see the sunshine that grew their food, the clouds that became the water they drink, their parents and grandparents, all of it. We are literally made of non-us stuff. And once you see that, the hard line we draw between me and the world just dissolves. So what you're seeing here is this incredible journey of thought, this great decentering. It starts with Khusraw, who knocks humanity off its pedestal in the cosmos. Then Buddhism comes along with interbeing and erases the line between us and the world. And then you get to the final, most radical step, the Buddhist doctrine of Anatta, or no self, which says that feeling you have of being a solid, stable, unchanging me inside your head, it's a complete illusion. I mean, a famous Buddhist text, the Diamond Sutra, is super blunt about this. It says if you want to be truly free, you have to let go of your most basic ideas of who you are. The idea of having a self, the idea of being a person, even the idea of having a lifespan. The sutra says that clinging to these labels, these concepts that make us feel real and solid, is the very thing that keeps us stuck and suffering. Okay, so we've got these ancient traditions telling us our minds are flawed and our sense of self is basically a mirage. So what does modern science have to say about this? Well, it turns out its conclusion is just as shocking. Let me just put this out there, straight up. From the viewpoint of modern psychology, there is no CEO in your head. There's no tiny pilot sitting behind your eyes pulling levers. That feeling you have that there's a single unified you running the show is, according to the science, a really powerful illusion. So if there's no CEO, then how does anything get done? Well, the leading theory is something called the modular model of the mind. It basically says your mind isn't one thing. It's more like a noisy committee meeting full of different programs or modules that evolution built for different jobs. There's a self-protection module, a mate attraction module, a status-seeking module, and the you that wants a salad is a totally different module than the you that wants a cheeseburger. So where does your conscious self come in? Well, the best analogy is that it's like a press secretary. Its job isn't to decide anything. Its job is to wait and see which module shouts the loudest, and then run to the podium and spin a really good story about why I chose to do that thing all along. This just completely flips the script on Western philosophers like Descartes, who said, "I think, therefore I am." Science is now saying it's more like, actions happen, and therefore I invent a story about a thinker. Okay, but wait a minute. This raises a huge question. If our sense of self is a delusion, why on earth did we evolve this way? I mean, it seems like a pretty massive bug in the system. Why would natural selection, this incredibly efficient process, build a brain that's so good at fooling itself? And the answer, it turns out, is all about being social animals. Our ancestors survived by forming alliances and managing their reputations. And natural selection stumbled upon a brilliantly sneaky trick. The most convincing storyteller is the one who believes their own story. If you genuinely believe you're a stable, consistent, rational person, you are way more persuasive when you're trying to convince other people that you're a good partner or a reliable friend. That feeling of being a coherent self isn't a bug, it's a feature. It's like a powerful piece of PR software designed to help us win the social game and pass on our genes. So we've gone down these three completely different rabbit holes: 11th century Persian philosophy, Buddhism, and modern psychology. And they all end up in the same strange place. Our sense of self is not what it seems. Which brings us to the most important question of all. What are we supposed to do with this knowledge? What's so amazing is that each tradition doesn't just point out the problem, it also offers a way forward. For Naser Khusraw, knowing we have a partial intellect should lead us to intellectual humility, to admitting we don't know everything. For Buddhism, realizing the illusion of self opens up the path of meditation and mindfulness, ways to watch our thoughts without getting swept away by them. And for evolutionary psychology, understanding our deceiving brain gives us a new strategy. Learn to see our feelings not as absolute commands, but as suggestions from our ancient programming. Suggestions we can look at, evaluate, and then choose whether or not to follow. They all point toward the same goal: freedom through awareness. Hey everyone, if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear what you think. Your support really means a lot and helps me keep creating content for you all. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Now, I know it's easy to hear all this and feel kind of lost. If my mind is tricking me and my self isn't real, then what's even left? But that is absolutely the wrong takeaway. The real message here is about empowerment. Because once you understand how the machine is programmed, you can start to step outside of the automatic settings. Once you understand that a wave of anger is just an ancient survival module firing off, you gain this little bit of space where you can just observe it, question it, and ultimately decide not to be its puppet. And that leaves us with one last big idea to chew on. We've seen that the self isn't some solid thing, but it's more like a story that our brain's press secretary is constantly telling us. So if the self is just a story, doesn't that make you the author?